Are we ready to begin, Mrs. Willard?
We are.
Baking bread at Musée de Venoge with wild yeast. Wild yeast caught at Venoge. Rye, whole wheat, and white flour, salt to taste, water. Bread is the staff of life, but to get bread, one needs some natural magic. One also needs a bake oven. The architecture of the Venoge cottage is French colonial. The bake oven we have today is a French-Canadian design. There is no evidence that there was ever a bake oven here, but for demonstration purposes, we decided to build one. Let's use that oven and bake some fresh bread. Baking will require the oven to reach a desired temperature. To begin, stack seasoned wood with smaller pieces on the bottom. Leave plenty of room for the air to move through the wood. When you have finished laying in the firewood, light it. Allow the fire to burn for about 3 to 4 hours. The temperature inside the oven will reach about 800 degrees. The oven door stays off at this stage as the fire vents out the front. Now let's conjure up some of that natural magic. We'll find it right here in the Venoge garden. It's yeast. Yeast is just about everywhere. A fungus, it is a living, single-celled organism. Yeast is a leavening agent. It causes the bread to rise. A few days before baking, we mixed a little bit of water in a bowl of flour. We prefer rye flour. This we set in the herb garden to capture the wild yeast. The covered mixture remained in the garden all day until it was brought into the house. A few days later, the magic began as the mixture started to bubble. This told us our yeast was alive and multiplying. We fed our yeast by adding more flour and water. This allowed the new yeast to nibble on something while their numbers increased. And that brings us to today, baking day.
Combine a total of 16 cups of rye, white, and whole wheat flour in a large bowl. To this add about 3 teaspoons of salt. Our natural magic, the yeast, has now increased to the point of being usable. Most is added to the flour. Be sure to hold some back. The reason is as long as you feed it, your yeast will continue to grow and be usable the next time you wish to bake. Now add the water. We used about 2 cups. Combine the ingredients using a spoon until the mixture is too stiff for the spoon. Then begin working the mixture with your hands. I used a method my grandmother taught me. Kneading causes the character of the dough to change. This is due to the proteins in the flour that help the dough rise and give it its special texture. The dough is now covered and placed in a warm spot to rise. Usually, this takes about an hour or so, longer if the room is cool. The risen dough is punched down. This releases gas bubbles that have formed during the first rising. Then the dough is shaped into loaves. At this point, herbs like chives, garlic, or thyme can be kneaded into the dough for additional flavor. Take your loaves and slash the top. This allows them to expand in a preferred direction.
Return to the oven and push the remaining coals aside. Put the oven door back on to equalize the interior temperature. There are various methods to determine the correct baking temperature. Tossing cornmeal in and watching how quickly it browns, or by putting your arm in. Singed hair can be a hazard. We like that temperature to be around 450 degrees. The loaves go directly onto the bricks and not in a baking pan. One drawback is that those bricks are covered with ash. Ash is not a flavor enhancer, so we swab out the oven floor with a wet, coarse mop. This removes most, but not all of the ashes. We made our mop with rough linen strips and a tree branch. It's time to put the loaves in the oven. Take some cornmeal and sprinkle it on the peel. This helps the bread slide off of the peel and onto the oven floor.
Close the oven door and wait. Soon you'll be able to smell the baking bread. When you detect that delicious aroma, it's time to give your handiwork a peek. Get to know your oven's quirks. Often, there are hot spots in the oven, and some rearranging of the loaves is needed. The loaves come out the same way they went in, on the peel. The loaves are hot, so be careful.
Also, remember the old maxim, waste not, want not? The heat in your oven is now good for slow baking, so add those pies or quick breads now. Our loaves baked in about 45 minutes. Your baking time may vary.